Did you know that despite making up 50% of sellers, women hold just 30% of the sales leadership roles? It's not a pipeline problem. That's a promotion problem. Welcome to the Women in Sales Leadership podcast, where we make the new rules of success for high-performing women in sales. And I'm your host, Amy Evans, sales leader turned executive coach. After 25 years in the trenches at Salesforce, EDP, and startups, I now help ambitious sales managers step into second-line leadership roles. If you are ready to lead with authority, earn what you're worth, and make a bigger impact, you are in the right place. Click follow so the next episode will be waiting for you. Hey there. Welcome back to the Women in Sales Leadership podcast. I'm going to talk with you about something that nobody really talks about with regard to your journey in leadership. And I have some notes here, so I'm going to look over, refer to this stuff because I want to make sure I get everything that I want to share with you today. So the thing that got me excited was I had a conversation today with a sales leader who was, for the first time in his career, getting ready to go change jobs and get a job as a sales leader in a place where he was going to be entering the company as a sales leader. What does that mean? Of course he's entering the company as a sales leader, Amy. No. Yeah, well, hang on a second, because it doesn't start out that way. And if you think about you when you first began your sales leadership career, and maybe you're in this moment right now, I went through it. Almost everybody does, where you go through this journey where you're a seller at the company that you're in. And the most often progression I see, like this is the way it goes. I have yet to see it go some way other than this. So I'm sure somebody out there has an exception story to tell. The way it is this, right, you go sell, you're very successful, and you raise your hand and you say, hey, I'm interested in leadership, whatever time frame unfolds, and then you get a crack at being a sales leader. And so part of your success as a sales leader is the fact that you've done the job. You've done the job of the seller. You know what good looks like. You know how to coach somebody through all of the tactical things, like the how to do the job part, like where do all the stuff, like how do you build a proposal and where do you go give pricing and what can we negotiate versus not negotiate, like all of the little stuff that you can show someone how to do because you've baked that cake inside that company before. Like you've been the chef. You're not instructing anybody or showing anybody how to do it. You've actually done the job. There'll come a point, though, where you are moving into a sales leadership role where you've not sold at that company. And so you have got to learn how to truly stretch yourself into your sales leadership and move away from this tactical selling and tactical leadership, right? Like, I know how to throw the ball. I know how to throw this pitch, to I'm not a pitcher, but I know how to win games. I get a little sportsy sometimes, and baseball's the only sport that I love. So you'll hear me talk about it sometimes. So, but it's walking into a company where you've not sold. And how do you execute that move successfully? And how do you do the things that are really hard to do when you come in as a sales leader, that where you've not sold at that company before? Maybe you haven't even sold in that exact industry before, right? And it's these 6 things that I wrote down. Okay. It's these 6 things that you really have to work on as part of that transition in that mindset to go from like a player coach person to being a strategic leader, because you don't have that technical knowledge anymore and you won't. And that's not what your job is, by the way.
So the first thing I have on this list here is credibility. How do you show up and communicate and demonstrate your credibility to a team of new leaders, to a team of new sellers? And that is just, you've got to tell your story, right? They have to understand that you've walked miles in their shoes of carrying a bag and actually having to own a quota as an individual contributor. And then you've also led as a first lane sales leader. So a little bit of sharing goes a long way. But what won't work and what you really have to watch out for is any kind of continuing reference where you keep saying back at insert place I was before. Okay. When you can say that a little bit. You can use that eensy beensy tiny bits. That's an actual scientific measurement. You can use that a little bit. However, that reference to what came before only works when you first get there, and you've got to move on from that quickly. So credibility in like, I've done this before in the back, and telling your backstory as you introduce yourself to leaders. So I'm looking at my notes to make sure I don't forget anything. All right. So next is really this trust. And trust isn't a one and done situation. You know that. Trust comes from really having the team believe and understand that first and foremost, you're here to deliver the number for the business. Like that is your job, period, the end. And accurately forecast that number for the business. Like that's the 2-for-1 main job. Now there are 1,000 things that go into delivering that number, right? And delivering accurate forecasts. And the trust really comes into you knowing what your job is for the company, knowing what your job is for yourself, your own personal goals, and having those, and at the same time, a coexistence of understanding the goals of your sellers and your leaders that report into you, and taking the time to invest to get to know these people. Now, this is where I see so many leaders come up short. You make assumptions about the people that either are your directs, if you're a second line leader, or you make assumptions about your sellers, thinking like, they're just like me. They're motivated like I am. They want what I want. They work the way I did. They don't, and they won't. However, when you invest the time to get to know them and understand what motivates them, that trust becomes more solid because you will have stopped and done something that few leaders that ever came before you in these people's lives have done, which is bothered to get to know these folks and then understand what's important to them. The way to do this is you've got to invest the time in one-on-ones right away. And if you have been with a team for a while and you didn't have the luxury of doing this step at the beginning for whatever reason, there's no reason you couldn't do it now. There's no reason you couldn't do it at your next kickoff for the quarter or midway through the quarter. You announce, hey, guess what? I'm going to be having skip level calls with all of the AEs on the team. And I want you all to know that I'm going to be setting those up. Look for them on your calendar. This is a get to know you conversation. This is a, understand what's important to you in your career kind of conversation. We will not be talking about forecast. We will not be talking about your deals. This is a conversation about you and your career and what you are wanting to achieve for yourself. So that trust building is an element of where you're completely distinguishing yourself from being a player coach to a strategic leader. And it really goes down to the individual level. And what you cover and make notes on in that conversation is, these are the questions. What motivates you? Hey, quick break for a second. If you are a sales leader who is ready for your next step up, and I'm talking about leading other sales leaders, becoming a director, a VP, even a CRO, then this is for you. I'm hosting a free workshop.
You can grab your spot at amyevanscoaching.com. This is for sales leaders who are in tech and are wanting to land jobs where you can earn anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million a year. And again, you can grab your spot at amyevanscoaching.com. Okay, back to the show.
Right? What motivates you? How did you get into sales? What do you love about sales? What are you trying to achieve this year? And what would it mean to you when you achieve it? Those questions will take you into a deeper level of connection and understanding. And it wouldn't hurt if you also asked the seller to walk you through their background a little bit, like take the time to do your homework for your LinkedIn profile review, but ask them to share with you what they've done before. Part of this, you might discover some gold in your team that you didn't know existed before. There might be hiding among your sales team some potential leaders who could either be ready to people lead or be ready to take on initiatives that you have brewing in your mind. So this investment of this one-on-one time is so powerful to your credibility and trust building. Okay. So the third one here is value, baby. Oh, you know what? Sales leaders are just overhead. We really are. We're just overhead. And if you realize that's who you really are, then your number one goal in life is to bring value to your team, value to every single part of the business. So if it's your leaders and you're trying to bring value to them, you've got to understand what are some of the challenges that leader has. Are they having a hard time managing the territory? Do some of the accounts need to be shuffled around? Do they need permission and coaching on how to deal with performance issues on the team, right? You are there to deliver value. How may I serve you? And here's the question that won't work. If you are sitting there asking your leaders, what can I do for you? Or how can I help? You are missing out. You're missing out. Because 9 times out of 10, they are so flippin' busy, they have no idea how you can help them. They have no idea some of the things that they should be asking your help with. So the elements that you can almost always count on to be challenges in any sales team look like this. Somewhere on the team, there's talent that needs to be up-leveled. Either somebody needs some coaching, extra coaching or training, or there's also folks that just maybe they would be happier working someplace else. And we've been letting them hang out and hide for too long because the sales manager doesn't want to deal with the problem that having this individual on the team is. Your role is to suss out, right? To distinguish and find out, what's going on with the talent on the team and how can you help up level that team that manager has, because the real goal is to have A players across the board. Imagine if that manager had A players, every single one of them, they'd be hitting their number. If your manager's hitting their number, that's just a beautiful thing flowing right up through the organization. This is the value add you can provide. So helping with talent issues, helping with coaching support, and it goes without saying deal support, obviously. And, I've seen so many sales leaders decide that they're going to come in with some kind of like a Superwoman cape at the end of the sales cycle and like, oh, all of a sudden I'm going to rescue this deal and, save it. Look, you can do that. I've done it. I bet you have too. The real power, as you know, is being involved at the outset of the client engagement. When you're in a big deal pursuit, the executive alignment, top to bottom, you've got to be in there aligned and totally paying attention to what's going on in that deal, managing those deals. Now, you can't be in every deal. You know that. If you try to, you're going to drive yourself crazy. You're going to drive your team crazy. So stay away from that insanity. Focus on only the deals that you really have to be involved in. And If there are deals that are sizable, you're automatically involved in those. And you have to decide what sizable means. In my teams, it was like deals that were $1 million plus, I was already in there. Now, that doesn't mean that if a deal is falling apart, that you aren't the 911 emergency phone call, because you are. And sometimes that's all it takes, is getting on the phone with a CFO and saying, you know what, hey, we've been through 7 iterations of this proposal. Your team has invested X amount of time with us. And here's the outcomes that we're going to deliver for you. Here's the cost of not doing it by now. You're asking me for another discount. You've got our best deal on the table. Whatever the story is, right? You can deliver these messages. It is an absolute art to know when to involve yourself. And I'll tell you, the one thing that's most important is, if you tell your sellers you're going to do something in an opportunity for them, you better do it. You better do it, and you better provide them with evidence that you did it. The screenshot of the text, the screenshot of the email, this whatever, the LinkedIn outreach. Let them know you did the thing that you said they were going to do. Every time you do that, they trust you to bring you in more when they need that executive support. This is how you build this credibility when you've not been the seller and you're the leader, and you're coming in to lead and lead strategically and contribute both strategically and tactically when needed for your team. Okay. So this is something that you get to embrace. And it's a part of like letting go. Part of leadership is it's a learning how to adjust your grip to the situation. Certain situations you got to grab on real tight, and it's usually when things are a mess or out of control. For the most part, if you're not in an absolute dire emergency or complete and total turnaround, your grip can be somewhere near to strong to neutral. And the idea with that is that you are far more empowering of your team. One of the biggest capes that you've got to take off for yourself, your Superwoman cape, is this, like, you are the technical knowledge expert, because you are not going to know the product like you used to. You're not going to know the solution. And by the way, it's not your job to know that. You have solution engineers, you've got product people who can talk product all day, every day. You do have to know what the product does. You do have to know the primary outcomes that it produces, right? And that is part of the learning when you are in a new role or in a new team and you're having to figure out the product. But your job is to keep people focused on revenue generating activities and revenue generating activities. So whether that's, deals, progressing deals, getting more deals in the pipeline, forecasting the deals, which is a must-do report out to the business that nobody can avoid, and plus it's part of the job that you have the honor to do. You've got to let go of the fact that you are not a technical seller anymore or a technical leader. You will know the technicalities of how to run a proper sales process. You know the technicalities of how to execute strategy. And you'll be learning more and more about how to execute overall go-to-market strategy as part of your evolution as a sales leader. And the next thing is this expansion of yourself, where, maybe up until this point, you have considered yourself like, hey, I have to touch all these areas of the business in order to get deals done, whether you were a seller or you were a sales manager, managing sellers. When you're leading at the strategic sales level, sales leadership level, you now are a business leader. You're part of the executive leadership team, and you've really got to think of yourself that way. Because when you can begin to understand what's happening in the field with regard to product, maybe product gaps that we have, service gaps that we have, and you can begin to collaborate and work with your other department leads in product, in service, in development, even legal to help with bottlenecks, and finance to help with deal approvals. That is part of your overall role. And you begin to really elevate you operating as an executive, a sales executive leader, where you're delivering the revenue number, you're coaching all up and down your sales organization, and you're aligning yourself across the business to push the business forward and align so that the job of selling is easier. You're making it easier for your customers to buy, which is always a win. Making it easier for customers to be retained. Everybody loves that. And then making sure that product is truly focusing on developing the components of the product that your customers and prospects are telling you that they must have and need in order to buy more from you, right? It takes you from this world of sales only to true revenue executive, where you're touching every single part of the business and executing relationships along the way. This is the step that you make when you go from being a player coach leader to being a strategic leader. And the reality is, nobody wakes up just knowing how to do this. You take a deep breath. You have a plan about getting to know your people, making sure you've communicated about your values, your experience, and what you bring to the table. And then wake up every day committing yourself to, I'm going to bring value. I'm going to bring value to my team. I'm going to bring value to my company. And I'm going to serve. I'm going to serve my clients. I'm going to serve my leaders. I'm going to serve the executives that I report to and our shareholders, right? All of that is what is required to make this kind of jump. These are the things to think about if you are in that moment of moving from the place where you grew up in your leadership to going into your very first leadership role outside of a company where you sold inside that company. I know you can do it. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining today. I know you're a super generous person, and a gift that you could give to someone you know, a friend, a colleague that you think would enjoy today's episode, would be to send them a text, share a link to this episode with them. I do produce this show myself, and every time you share it, it helps the podcast grow and it supports the work that I do here. Also, if you happen to be a sales leader who is ready to take your next step up into a leader of leaders role, whether it's via promotion or you're ready to go and get that new job at a new company, I'm talking about director roles, VP roles, even CRO roles in B2B tech, where you can earn $500,000 to $1 million or more. The workshop I'm giving is an hour-long workshop. It's totally free. You'll learn the process that I teach my clients on how to effectively position themselves, effectively network, and own their executive presence so they can land the job and get hired and promoted into these big sales leadership roles in B2B tech. If this sounds like you, come grab your spot. It's waiting for you at my website, amyevanscoaching.com, where you can unlock what's next for you.